For those of you who didn't watch my concept teaser of the series, it's very loosely going to be focusing on the Splatoon community, as that's the scene I have the biggest attachment to. But there's going to be a few episodes that can pretty accurately be applied to pretty much any societal grouping or fandom, and this first one will be one of the more general type. So this can honestly be shared with anyone. Anywhere that has humans is going to run into the same humanly problems of ego and probably stupidity. And this is my opportunity to have an outlet to air a lot of my grievances that I've had with how things have been running, yet often kept quiet about. I apologize for the weird verbal adventure I'm going to be taking you on, and it's probably not organized as well as it could be. And I'm by no means a philosopher or anything with any official credibility, just another member living on this planet. But I thought it was at least a unique enough perspective and bad take to answer the age-old question I see posted so often that you probably ask rhetorically, but I will now answer for you literally why one does not simply just be a decent person, and why we can't have nice things. But you know what? Actually, I'm not sorry, since I'm not supposed to be nice about this anymore, so deal with it. Throughout this entire video, we're going to be looking at humanity through as objective of a lens as possible, with some gamer speak sprinkled in. You can probably even count the amount of times I say objective. To start, we're going to break all of humanity down into a mere 5 types. Good people, decent people, normal people, not great people, and bad people. And just for the heck of it, we're going to throw in 2 secret classes of heroic people and evil people. The average person will pretty much never run into either of them. People are way more nuanced than just good and evil, but I can't exactly say they don't exist. Most of humanity lives within the 3 middle types: decent, normal, and not great. And pretty much every person you know or will know in life is just a normal person. They're not heroes, they're not evil either. They'll do good things, and sometimes they'll do bad things. They just are. But it's very important that you visualize them on a horizontal spectrum. Doesn't matter which is on which side, but they're all equal on the x-axis. Just stay with me and we'll explore that some more later, but kinda tuck it away for now. But now let's talk about a small handful of stat requirements you need to be a decent person. The reason we can't just be a decent person is because being nice requires patience, empathy, self-sacrifice. And those are traits that are not always to the benefit of the survival of the human self. You don't always gain a lot when you're nice to people, and the fact that objectively there isn't much in it for you immediately, mind you, there's absolutely benefits to working together as societies do, and need to do, but sometimes that's too slow of a result. You want instant gratification for yourself right meow. A worthwhile return on your investment. But being patient with people is not fun, it's not easy, it's usually always expected, but it's not glorifying. And because of that last one and how oftentimes thankless it is, that's a huge part of the problem for a lack of incentive. If someone is slinging mud and hits you directly in the face, you're not just going to go calmly wipe yourself off and just go, "Ah yes, it appears someone has angrily misplaced their rage in my direction. Let's take a moment to unpack the possible sources of your pain and trauma and come to an understanding." In actuality, you can reasonably look to defend yourself and even become a part-time mudslinger hunter. But instead, a true good person is going to let it slide, brush it off like it never happened, and take the high road, overlook it. In this modern age, we like to do things that make us look cool. We like to chase the clout, as the cool kids say. Unfortunately, we would rather look good than do good. Clout chasing has clouded our judgment. Because doing good is hard, but looking good is way easier, and you can still receive a lot of the benefits. Since being nice and doing good are not as cool as they should be, which we need to normalize doing the right thing, by the way. And I'm completely serious, we need to hand out cookies. The right incentive makes all the difference as a powerful motivator. Anyway, doing good and being nice makes you vulnerable. And being vulnerable is not always comfortable, especially to those tough macho types who aren't allowed to show any signs of weakness, or the beta males will finally get them or something. Staying on script is really tough for me as I have all these little additions just pop in my head. Anyway, when doing nice things and being vulnerable, that is oftentimes when these things called bullies will strike. They see the opening, they want to get that little jab. There's many different types and degrees of intensity the bully class can take. The one that completely dominates the meta is the rogue online keyboard warrior variant. Takes little to no investment of class experience, and due to the online anonymity skill, you're shielded with accountability resist, and any long-lasting societal penalties that you justifiably deserve are negated and forgotten within a few weeks. And since opposites tend to attract, the bullies like to prey upon the goody little two-shoes. They like that matchup in the meta. Hypothetically, if we are to normalize being good and raising the standard of human decency, the people who are not great and below that standard are highlighted that much more with their bad attitudes. The people who aren't bad necessarily, the chaotic neutrals, they come that much closer to falling below the line. So in order to maintain their playstyles, it's in their best interest to try and deter the people who want to encourage others to do well not to. So that way, the not bad but certainly not good model doesn't become villainized, or doesn't get banned. And that way, they don't have to change. They can continue to be as mediocre as they want to be. So oftentimes when they hear they're getting nerfed, they're the ones who retaliate with the little psychological jabs of discouragement. The people who were already beyond redemption, they probably don't care and are just going to keep on keeping on anyway. Sometimes those not great people just don't want to change. They don't want to put forth that extra amount of effort to be better, especially if they feel they don't have to. And sometimes those people can't be better, and they're by no means bad people. They still have value and contribute genuinely good things. And there are lots of people in the community with that very alignment. Some are very beloved icons and prominent names, but they're incapable of humbling themselves except to maybe a very, very select few. In gaming communities, value is mostly brought on by how good you are at pushing the plastic. See this? It's plastic. But if I push it really good, I'm valued more. My entire person has more worth in the scene if I can do the video game good. Somehow. Regardless of whatever my personality may be like, and any inappropriate conduct I do, or terrible things I think, as long as I don't get caught, leave any trails, or say anything too stupid too often, I'm golden and people will love me. All because of this. My personality has absolutely zero influence on people's perception of me, all because we're distracted by this. I don't need to be a good person, I don't need to contribute anything of substance, as long as I have good substance right here. I can treat people however I want, and I can even embrace my toxicity. I can trash talk people and say whatever I want about them, all because I can beat them in a video game. So remember the 5 types of people I had you spread horizontally? Let's get into a different aspect where verticality will come into play. No one wants to be on the bottom of the totem pole, the last in the pack. They want to rise up and be top dog. Because who doesn't? But the fact remains, there has to be a best and a worst. And in the pursuit of human survival, you don't want to be last or have almost any association with what is, and want to be as far ahead as possible. Why then would I want to have a trait of patience that can have a self-destructive effect to it, or display some bit of sacrifice that allows people to get ahead of me, when instead I can just lie and cheat and steal to get ahead? Not even to a malicious degree. Just harmless enough and small enough to where I won't get caught, and the only person who will be negatively affected may even be a complete stranger who is only slightly inconvenienced. But because of their loss, I have now gained. I can behave in a way that will provide me an immediate gain. If I invest more into the greed stat, I can get more stuff. And I like stuff. Investing in the generous stat, I have to give up stuff and maybe later in the future I get a possible return on my investment? No thank you. Or I just do nothing. I don't gain anything, but I certainly don't lose anything. And that still sounds like a better outcome than being generous. Plus, doing nothing is easy. I'm great at it, and I can do it right now. The most immediate Splatoon example I can think of is someone entering a tournament they shouldn't have. It had a small prize, it was for lower skilled players, but they entered anyway, and they won because they were more skilled than everyone else. In the grand scheme of reality, they didn't really do anything that wrong. It's a video game. No one was physically hurt. And they got their bag. They got money out of it. And money can immediately buy me happiness. Compared to working hard and practicing to get better and maybe beat skilled people at or above my level eventually, I might as well beat up who I can right now and get what I can for it instead. And their only penalty is some community on monitor tech shaming and negative stigma that will be forgotten in a week. Sign me up! More money, please! So that addresses another huge issue. The concept of morality throws everything out the window. Everyone is going to have their own personal spectrum. On everybody's spectrum, nobody will ever really place themselves too high or too low. And thus we end up with a bunch of normal people. And to blur the boundaries even more, everyone's personal spectrum is going to have a different threshold. Something that I might think is bad, you might think is perfectly okay and acceptable. And things get even more confusing to try and decide who should get the authority to decide what's good and what is bad. I think I should get to decide, but maybe you want to be able to decide. So essentially, we're all running around trying to play the same game of life with different rule sets and expecting an average that doesn't really exist. And because my rule set has you towards the bottom, why would you want to play by that? Especially when you don't have to. You're going to think it's stupid, ignore it, and continue playing according to your own rule set that shows you in a more favorable light. Undeniably, this is a premise of how religions are often applied. You adhere to a set of doctrines, and those who perform according to the ones you believe are perceived as good, and those who do not are a problem. Objectively, you're both doing the exact same thing, regardless of whether or not you believe in anything spiritual. You're operating within the moral boundaries you personally deem acceptable. And objectively, if you step outside those boundaries, there's no immediate punishment or reward. I'm going to give you bad and overly extreme examples, but I promise there's a point in the scaling. If you're a terrible person and you kill an innocent victim, you are not then immediately killed. If you save someone and end up a hero, your life doesn't change. You're not given an extra life or anything. And if you tried to save someone but failed, objectively your life still won't change. You won't be penalized for not succeeding, just like you're still not rewarded. Those are some of the most extreme examples I know, but you can then understand why it's so easy to step beyond moral boundaries on smaller things, as there's way less at stake, and why people will do that so often. So let's take a better small example. You see a piece of artwork that you really like. With a small right click and save image, that piece of art is now yours to do whatever you're capable of with, and the person who worked on it and put in real effort to create it won't even know. And what they don't know won't hurt them. But now, I can post this or add this to whatever project I want, and now anyone who sees it will associate me with it, and I will look cool for sharing the cool thing. Now I could go credit the artist, but that tiny bit of extra effort is too much for me to go out of the way, and I already got what I need, so I think we'll just call it there and stop while I'm ahead. Does it make them a terrible person? No. It's not nice, but on the scale of things that are good and bad, it's unfortunately objectively a bit too harmless. And granted, this is easy for me to say as someone who isn't even an artist. But in some cases, for certain works of art, this is their livelihood, and it's a huge deal. They need to be compensated for the amount of effort they put into these things. And even I hate to frame it like this, but that's their problem. I don't want you to suffer, but I'm not always going to go out of my way to make sure that you're living your absolute best life. But for the record, I absolutely love and respect artists. The ability to just bring to life something out of nothing that is the blank canvas, that's amazing to me, and I often wish I would have invested more skill points into that stat, but I digress. Pay your artists, give them proper credits when they ask, or even if they don't, and just don't steal their stuff. My main point is that pretty much the entirety of the internet operates on stealing content from other people. Like the concept of repeating that joke someone else said, but louder, and now that everyone heard it, they think that you came up with it, and that you're the funny one. But with less accusatory language, it's the same for clicks and retweets and trends, and you hope everyone stumbles upon your version first. Almost no idea is original anymore, as it draws some kind of inspiration from somewhere else, but depending on how blatant you are can determine whether or not you're going about it in a good or bad way. There is an imaginary average on what we all kind of agree as a society as being a decent person. But there is nothing concrete, and it's really vague, and it's just a huge gray area. We create laws to try and be more visible guidelines, but you don't have to follow the law. There's supposed to be agreed upon penalties for breaking the laws, but that's not always how it do be. Especially if you're someone perceived with a valuable social status. And if you're fortunate enough to have a high enough money stat, you can just pay your way out of the penalties. And hey, remember that old greed stat? That's probably gonna get you more money. More than that generous one. And why would I reward something as crucial as generosity when you're kinda supposed to be doing that anyway, so no cookie for you. And there's no penalty for being a greedy person. Being greedy doesn't make you bad or evil. It just makes you greedy. It all depends on what you do with that greed. So till then, you're just a normal greedy person. Some people whomst I've loved dearly could be quick to ask something of me before they would even think to give or do anything for me. Especially since they know that in our dynamic, there is a high probability that I will do it and be useful to them. And I'm not even their parent with an obligation to take care of them, but I still care about them. Is it a degree of taking advantage of me? Yes. Is it malicious? Not necessarily. So they're not doing anything wrong, and they're still pretty good people. Some people are just natural takers more than they are givers. But they need to be completely aware, while having such equipoise towards acquisition, some days that single ask is going to be asking too much of someone who will undoubtedly have other sources already taking from them. And if you're not doing anything to replenish their bountiful spirit, you will deplete them sooner rather than later. You may not be a bad person, but you will be a part of the problem. And you probably won't even be blamed for it because they care about you, even though you are partially responsible. Another prime example is our job economy. The most reoccurring thing I see when looking at reviews for certain job positions is the job is okay, my coworkers were cool, but the management was terrible, thus making the job not really worth the hassle for the measly amount of pay. And it's like everything would have been fine if the leadership was better. It's not like people don't want to do the job regardless of how menial the tasks may feel. It's just that this most likely isn't the only or even best option, so people aren't going to subject themselves to that. But it's not the management's main objective to make sure you're super comfortable, as their main goal is obviously to make sure the business runs smoothly and makes them money. I'm reminded of a scene from an old cartoon, Tiny Toons, and it's real short, so let me play it for you real quick.
Faster, cheaper, cheaper, faster, faster, cheaper, cheaper, faster, faster, cheaper, cheaper, faster, faster, cheaper, cheaper, faster.
Please, more money! I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. I'll go. I'll go. Ow. 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 Please.
Anyone else want more money?
My younger self was too blissfully ignorant to really comprehend the meaning behind what was being conveyed. All I needed to understand was funny rabbit yell stuff and hit person. Comedy. Adult me now, on the other hand, is like, yeah, that's funny. Not real at all. Businesses certainly would never want to treat people like cheap sources of labor at highest optimizations, cutting the corners of human decency to unbalanced power dynamics. Definitely hasn't been normalized at all. And consumers absolutely hold companies with exposed poor business practices accountable by not supporting them financially. Oh, wait a minute. This is Earth. That's exactly how we do things here. And I get it. Convenience is a large factor. Why would I go to a smaller mom and pop business way out of the way that could be in desperate need of my support when I can just go to a Walmart because they're everywhere and have everything all in one place? Or better yet, why even go anywhere when I can just log on to Amazon and have pretty much anything I want brought right to me? Never mind the fact the workers are put under inhumane levels of stress to address the very needs of my instant gratification as a higher priority than their well-being, because to Amazon, One of those things is making them money, rather than the other, which will actually have them give away some of their money as a paycheck. Ugh. And on my consumer end, even if I were to shop elsewhere, Amazon surely won't be hurting and missing out on my individual funding, as they'll still have millions of other customers to make money from. And since everyone is doing it, there's no need to feel any shame about it or commit to a better alternative in the long run, as you're getting what you need at the end of the day. So whatever is happening to anyone else in the process doesn't really matter, right? Nothing personal, it's just business. And it brings us all the way back to incentive. Simply saying to just be a good person isn't a good enough reason. To that I can just say, why? That person's not being a good person. Why should I have to be a good person? I don't want to be taken advantage of. Or why shouldn't I just take advantage of that person? I get mine, and I care about me. So we need to buff the incentive for being a good person. They earned that cookie. Will we have enough cookies to go around if everyone does a good job? No, probably not. But we're not even close to that at the moment, as we have a bunch of normal people doing nothing, and some decent people, and an even smaller handful of good people truly doing good things. If those who aren't doing good things want a cookie, they start doing good things, and now they have a cookie. I don't think I really need to go that in-depth on one of the more recent examples to take place in the Splatoon community, especially since you've probably already settled on one side of the issue or the other. But I will comment on the fact that our Splatoon organizations and TOs and whoever holds slight positions of authority are undoubtedly filled with great people. The fact they're obviously generous enough to give their time for the enjoyment of others for a video game where they will not be compensated monetarily for their efforts goes to show they have some great qualities in them. But good intentions doesn't at all necessitate good choices at all times. As mere mortals, we will fall short at some point. There's no ifs, it's a when. We're not perfect, and it will be disappointing when you see people you hold in such high regard do things that seem very out of character with the image you have of them in your head. Whether it be a lapse of judgment, lack of self-control, or caving to situational pressure, or whatever. You can't escape from crossing that fate. And that domino effect of bad decisions can be incredibly hard to stop, as it's pretty much only impeded by the accountability of the offender owning up to their actions and taking responsibility to try and rectify the situation. Or it's the grace of others willing to forgive them, letting them have second or even third chances and allowing them to learn from their mistake. And with those literally being about the only two choices, and neither of them easy, as I'm really struggling to think of a third, so maybe I'm just tuttling and completely missing something, which please share with me, by the way, if I am. I'd find that truly fascinating. But it's not always so simple to just do the right thing. Oftentimes you will feel better, but again, that feeling of relief kicks in later. In the moment, it's hard not to just take the easiest and fastest way out of a stressful situation and try to just sweep everything under the rug as quick as possible to move on to better times. So along with incentive, accountability also needs a buff. A clear rule set that, if broken, will have a penalty. Yet it becomes hard to be able to enforce that when there'll be quite a few occasions when someone won't know they couldn't do something, so you can't quite punish them because it had to be a learning experience for them. Or it's someone important to you and you've known them to be a much better person compared to this one mistake, and you don't want them to get in trouble because it will make their life worse and indirectly your own life worse since they're part of your life. And this whole thing operates on trust, and the liars and hypocrites in power love it, and tons of other people are discouraged since sometimes it's just not worth it. And that, my friends, is why it is in fact hard to just be a decent person, because it's not always that easy, and things that aren't easy are usually hard. I don't really have a positive note to end on here, other than to say that at the end of the day, I think that being a good person is worth it. I think it's worth being a good person for you. And I hope that you think it's worth being a good person for me. And that way we both think it's worth being good for the both of us. And if everyone feels that way, we'll all be looking out for each other's best interests. And you definitely have to look out for the people who aren't good at defending themselves, especially when you care about them. I will say that you get a nice defensive bonus when in formation with other good people who will come to your aid to defend you. Granted, some bad people will surround themselves with lots of good people that they've taken advantage of and also get that defensive bonus, or some good people are so nice that they'll blindly defend bad people anyway. And man, we were really going somewhere nice and now I've ruined the whole thing. But oh well. I'm not here to be political or anything, I'm simply stating the facts of my observations. That does not at all mean everything I say is a fact, or that these are even my own actual viewpoints, but they will have roots in the reality around me as I'm just trying to offer a possible explanation for stuff. My vocabulary ran out. We may also have completely different realities and different experiences, so feel free to tell me down in the comments below your own ideas on why people can't be nice, or maybe tell me why you think it's worth being a good person. I've already stated, I'm not here to be nice. I am now here to tell it like a normal person. Well, maybe a pretty decent person. Actually, I'm a good person. Well, okay, let's be real here. Compared to a lot of you, I'm pretty heroic. I mean, if I were a hero in Inkopolis, I'd probably be